Welcome back to another edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. I'm your host, Steve Buchanan, along with my handsome co-host, Julian Edlow. Another background. Actually, that's the same for Monday.
No, I'm kind of going, it's in my office, my spacious, luxurious office.
Yep.
It's more of a large closet, but you can get more than one camera angle in here if you are watching on YouTube. In past weeks, we've had a lot of problem with the sun over there. I don't know how to put up the curtains.
Correct.
So I have to just move. It's the easier option, and it actually gives a better background.
It does. It makes a great background. And as you see here, we have our guest, if you're watching on YouTube, Ben Rasa from Awesemo.com. He's got a great background. I don't know why you can't, copy what Ben has. Ben's got it all. Some figurines, some pictures, some, banners. It's beautiful.
There's animals, horses, a made-up hockey team.
I hit for the cycle there. Yeah, I put up anything and everything I had behind me, figuring it would please someone. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, of course, Ben. Ben and Julian, we're going to go over the NFL board. These guys are going to talk about things that I am no good at. So it's going to be a short appearance for me here, but they're going to talk some college hoops. They're going to talk some football. So we'll get to that later in the show. But let's just get right into the week 13 board. This is probably going to be a lengthy podcast, so let's not waste any time here. Before the show started, I asked Ben if he had any, inkling on this Thursday night game. Any primetime games at this point, I just want nothing to do with. Like, I feel like we all have been here. I just got to come out and say it now. Like, these primetime games have been horrific. Whatever we saw on Monday, like, it was just another example of that. Ben, I know you mentioned that you like the under in this game here, but like, I really don't want to take a side. The Cowboys have moved up to -6 now as favorites on the road against the Saints. I mean, I think this is just going to be an absolute slop fest with, Taysom Hill being under center. But if you had any lean in this one, it sounds like the under is the play for you.
Yeah, normally I would talk about the short week, but these teams played on Thanksgiving, so that's not even the case. Right. It's just a situation. My biggest thing really seems with no Kamara that Taysom Hill really, if nothing else, should grind up a lot of clock. And if that happens, it could be very methodical. I still respect the Saints front. I think that Dallas won't be able to run a ton. Yeah, they've got weapons on the outside, but the thing I feel most confident in truly is that it's a pretty ugly game, and Taysom Hill really helps that. So if I had to take anything, it would be this under.
So I put out my Thursday Night Football best bets article this morning, Thursday, December 2nd. Tough game for best bets, but I got one thing in it I'm looking to add later. The one thing I put in there was the Taysom Hill rushing prop over. So it kind of works a little bit with what Ben's going with. Taysom Hill is going to grind up this game. Now, it opened on Wednesday at 32.5. I wrote it up this morning, a little less value, but 4 yards, I think it's fine there at 36.5. It's since moved to 41.5.
Yep.
I wrote that I would be fine if you want to bet a prop in tonight's game, I would be fine with it up to 44.5. It probably doesn't feel good betting it at 44.5 when it opened 32.5 though. So that's kind of personal preference. I wrote it up at 36.5. I think it should get there. He started in the 4 starts he had last year. He averaged 53 rushing yards per game. He's got a couple of games that he's come into this season carrying 6 times, one for, I think it was 32, one in the high 20s. The last time we saw him in week 10 against Tennessee, he had just 3 carries for 23 yards. So in his starts, he averages 9.7 carries per game. So just on volume, this 10 carries, 40 something yards feels about right. And it wouldn't surprise me if he got to 50 as he generally does in his other starts. So that's just about the only thing that I saw that piqued my interest in this game. Yeah. Not a great game for betting, but that is the prop that jumped out to me, especially. And then you have no Kamara.
Yep.
That could lead to a little more rushing, and 2 O-linemen out, which could lead to, I know Taysom Hill runs a lot of set plays. That could just lead to, you get a 12-yard scramble there and you're off to a great start.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, there's really nothing that jumps out at me in this game. So I will happily put this one to bed, and we can talk about some games we actually care about, because this is not one of them. If you look at the board for Sunday, Julian, you and I talked about this on the Tuesday show, but we're kind of back to those, unfavorable lines when it comes to betting, especially with some of these favorites. We got 2 teams on the main slate favored by double digits. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers -11 against the Falcons. And then you have the Rams, who can't trust this team right now. 0-5 against the spread over the last 5 games, -12.5 against the Jaguars at home in this one. I mean, I don't know. I mean, are we just ignoring these two teams, even though they're massive favorites here? Like, especially when you look at the Buccaneers, they haven't been a great team against the spread as it is, but they're 1-5 on the road against the spread. So asking them to cover a double-digit spread in this scenario, it's a putrid Falcons team first and foremost, but you just can't trust, I feel like, either of these teams, despite them being the biggest favorites on the board.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't know how to bet these big favorites. I'm not going to bet any of them. If I did anything, it would be a 2-leg teaser, and it would be something along the lines of Cardinals Colts. If as long as they're both under 3, as long as we're talking like 2.5s and better here. Maybe something like that. Like I said, I told Steve this on Tuesday, Ben. I tried to get cute a little while ago. I was looking to, I did bet the Patriots on Thursday night against the Falcons, and they came through. The closing line hasn't mattered lately for the Patriots. They keep getting it done.
Yeah.
But I was like, so when the Patriots do get to 7, the value's not there. They were 4. What do we tease them with? And I looked at all the teaser legs on the board, and I was like, I can't find one. So what I'm going to do is I'll get cute, go 3 legs, and go Patriots money line, Tampa money line on Monday night, which beat the Giants that week. And I'll take the Titans money line against the Houston Texans. And what do the Titans do? They lose that game. So like, even if you try and get cute because you don't like a teaser and make it into an even heavier 3-leg money line parlay, like it doesn't get there for some reason in the NFL right now. So if anything on these big spreads, I will find 2 that I can get to under a field goal and tease them, but I can't even guarantee that I'll get there.
I hear you, man. It's been, it's not even just these divisional games. Like I think if I had to take a position on the Jaguars or the Falcons, it would be the Falcons at home. Divisional game, the first matchup, not that this is the end all be all, you look at it and you say, 48-25. It was a lot closer than that. Tampa scored twice really on defense. Yeah. So I think that there are opportunities there for the Falcons, but as you guys said, I mean, there's a lot of things I may do on Sunday. Backing the Falcons as 11-point dogs is not one of them.
Doesn't sound like any fun.
That doesn't sound like a good Sunday, no matter what happens.
Yeah, it's been ugly, and that line just it's a strange line first and foremost. -11. Like I don't even recall a time this season where we've seen a team be like -11, especially on the road here as well.
We've had them, and the road favorite of 11 covers more often than not.
Right.
But that's the way this NFL season is going. Like we said, we have 7 teams I think are favored by a touchdown or more, 5 of them on the road, like we talked about on Tuesday, which is wild.
Yep. One of the games that's taken some significant movement, though, especially over the last day or so, has been the Colts. They are now 9.5-point favorites against the Houston Texans. It was actually up to 10 a couple of hours ago. Do you make anything of such a large jump there, Ben, over the past day or so?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, the Colts with Jonathan Taylor, I think everyone from DFS to betting is expecting a healthy dose of him. And then, Houston, I do think that's probably a product. I'm not saying it's wrong of what we saw last week. I thought that was a game that, I mean, really, against the Jets of all teams, Tyrod Taylor, I thought there was a real argument to say that Houston was a much better team if they would have had him the whole year. But I think that narrative maybe has been thrown out the window. So I'm not shocked to see the Colts. People remember what they did to Buffalo on the road. Maybe that surges around 10, as you've talked about.
Julian, any thoughts about that? Because we were talking about this on Tuesday. This was probably one of the more enticing teaser pieces, but now, getting it getting it down to 3.5 is obviously not as appealing as a number as it was on Tuesday. Are you kind of leaving this one off the board, or are you still somewhat interested in this Colts team?
Only if it for some reason goes back to 8.5, and you can tease it down to 2.5. Otherwise, it's nothing for me here. We'll see what is Jonathan Taylor's rushing prop out? It might be.
It is not out as of yet.
Okay, yeah, it's not. All right, so that's maybe a spot to look at. It's going to be a huge number, but once they get ahead, and they should get ahead, they just keep going with Taylor. Like that Bills win, Carson Wentz had 100 passing yards, and they just keep handing it to Jonathan Taylor. So, in theory, the Colts get their lead in this game by handing it to Jonathan Taylor, and then hold the lead by handing it to Jonathan Taylor against an awful run defense. This is one of those spots where and he's having such a great season that they kind of want to keep that going, have him set some records, have him be in the MVP discussion. This feels like a spot where Jonathan Taylor has like a 200-yard, 3-touchdown game. So yeah, maybe Taylor props you can look at. And then another really good, just to throw a rushing prop out there before we finish up and talk a couple games that we actually do like. Joe Mixon is on the board on DraftKings Sportsbook, 86.5, big number. Joe Mixon has been carving people up lately. And the Chargers are the worst run defense in the NFL in terms of yards per game allowed. Games at home for Cincy, slight home favorite. Mixon, obviously, if you're playing DFS, he's a guy on your radar, so it's not surprising you. But Mixon to get that over feels good. He's been having a lot of multi-touchdown games. So yeah, you don't want to lay all the juice with him to score, but taking Mixon for 2+ touchdowns isn't out of the question for me either.
I'm all about Mixon.
Yeah, I think actually. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, he's carried the ball 58 times over the past 2 weeks in games that have been basically been blowouts. Now, I don't think that this game's going to be a blowout by any means, but Bengals are home favorites in this one. And Mixon at 86.5, like, it's a high number, but do you really look at that and go, oh, it's too high? Like, absolutely not. Like, I don't even know what number I would even consider the under at this point. Like, maybe if we're creeping into like the mid 90s, I would have to consider it, but like 86.5, if you're not smashing the over on that one, then I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, especially against this run defense that has been so bad, and a Chargers team that seemingly seems like it's falling apart at this point. Like, Herbert's been, a bit ineffective over the past couple of weeks, generating a lot of turnovers, but with the way the Bengals are playing, 86.5, that just feels too low. Like, maybe even by about 7-8 yards at this point, like I would be playing this up into the mid 90s.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. It's the volume. Like, it seems like a high number, but if you're going to give me 20, 22 carries, it's like 4 yards a carry against a team. They're allowing 4.7 yards per rushing attempt. They seem content to do that. It seems like that's the Chargers' philosophy, is don't, limit big plays and let people carve you up on the ground. I don't know why that would change when Cincy's clearly got a formula working lately.
So we were talking, go ahead, Julian.
I was just going to say, so we are having, after Ben and I talk college football, we're having James Alberino from Spread Investor on the show to mostly talk some NBA. He is going to give out a play on this Bengals Chargers game. But does anybody, besides like Mixon rushing, anybody got anything on a side on this game? If you don't, save it, because we'll have a play later in the podcast.
It's too close right now. I mean, it's, okay. I would be leaning towards the Bengals if I had a choice here as the home favorites, but with the line, with how it's set right now, I mean, it's hard to really hammer down who you like. The NFL is just so difficult at this point, right? Like, at this point, we should expect like a 12-point blowout from the Chargers with the way the line is set. I would lean Bengals in this one, but this is not a game I'm looking to actively take a side on.
Yeah, if there was 2.5 out there, it would be Cincy or pass, but certainly not a priority for me.
All right, let's talk about games that enough of scrolling through games saying this one's too hard, this one's too hard. Let's talk about things that we're actually betting. Being conservative in the NFL is obviously the way to go right now. I have one bet on Sunday so far. I laid the 3 with the 49ers on the road against the Seattle Seahawks. It's currently 3.5 at even money on DK Sportsbook. So I think you can just go alternate spread technically is just buying the half point and lay the minus 120 or 115 to get the -3. I saw enough from the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. They stink. Russell Wilson, since coming back from injury, stinks. He's just not the same guy. And the defense is no good against the run or the pass. So the only way, when the defense is kind of, the Legion of Boom has been slowly going downhill for years now in Seattle, and the only way they stick in games is Russell Wilson's kind of magic offensively, and that magic is not there. So the 49ers have been pretty good the last few weeks. I expect them, Eli Mitchell has 27 carries apiece in each of the last 2 games. I expect them to really run it down Seattle's throat in this one. Home field advantage is as meaningless as it's ever been in the NFL, so you don't have to be afraid to bet against Seattle in Seattle anymore. And I just think, Jimmy Garoppolo and those weapons, even without Deebo Samuel, will be good enough to pick apart that Seattle defense. I think 3 is too short of a number in this one.
I think this is actually my favorite game total to take the under on this week. It's actually climbed about 1.5 since yesterday. It was at 45. Now it's at 46.5. So I like the under even more. The Seahawks are 1-9-1 with the over this season. That is the worst in the league, as you can imagine. I mean, I don't think that you can get any worse than that, but they've been absolutely putrid. And then you see what you see on Monday. Where are they going to score? Who's going to do it for them? I don't have a clue. So,
I mean, in theory, you could get the ball to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and those guys could score like they used to. But
sure, but they have to get the ball first, and that's not looking like it's something that's going to be efficient. Now, the 49ers have been decent at hitting the over, and I'm fine with them, scoring plenty in this game. But is the Seahawks going to be able to make up the difference? I don't feel confident. Like from what you saw on Monday, like where do you think that the Seahawks are going to score in this game? Go ahead, Ben. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. I can rule out running the ball. The Seahawks cannot run the ball. That's not happening. So unless they find a way to get Lockett and Metcalf and, Gerald Everett is taking on 10 targets, that doesn't seem like a recipe for success. So I get it. Obviously Deebo will be missed, but the 49ers have a blueprint and Eli Mitchell can handle a serious workload. They've got Kittle. Ayuk will be fine. Jennings is catching touchdowns. I mean, it's hard to think that Seattle isn't cemented in the basement of the West right now.
They are cemented in the basement. So that's my only Sunday play right now. Anybody else got anything for Sunday before we go to the game of the century on Monday Night Football?
So I do, and this kind of incorporates that game, the Patriots game, but I did fire on a Eagles Patriots 6-point teaser there. So you're getting the Eagles down to -1, and then you're getting the Patriots up to 9. So you're getting some good numbers there on that. Was waiting on, the news of Jalen Hurts, if he was going to be in this game or not. Obviously he said that he's good to go. The ankle isn't much of an issue. They should be able to beat the Jets. And then, of course, we'll talk more about this in a second here, but, just love getting the Patriots as underdogs going against the Bills team who is going in the wrong direction, while the Patriots are just an absolute freight train right now. I don't think you can say enough about how much the Bills will miss Tre'Davious White. And with how accurate Mac Jones has been, the dude can just get the ball in anybody's hands at this point. And I'm not even just saying this because we live in Boston. I am not a homer by any means, but you have to love what you're seeing from Mac Jones and how accurate he is. No, I'm no Adam Kaufman, so don't shake your head. Okay. That guy is absolutely.
Well, we can bring Kaufman on for a weekly Patriots bet.
That sounds awful. We never get to talk. The guy never shuts up. Why would you want to bring Adam Kaufman on the show? That's a horrible.
That was a joke.
I know it was, but I'm just making sure.
But we do bet on the Patriots weekly now. The thing is, it's been working.
Yeah, right. So getting the Eagles down to -1, and then they getting the Patriots up to +9. I like that 6-point teaser a lot.
Ben, you got anything else?
I got one. None of these games feel good, but honestly, the Dolphins have shown me a little lately. They've shown some life. The spread is moving. There's 4.5. I'm okay with any of those numbers. I don't really think it matters if you have Glennon or Daniel Jones on the other side. Neither of those guys really worry me. And say what you want about Tua. I think it's definitely open for debate, but him and Waddle and Gesicki, these guys are doing enough. And obviously Miami's defense, when they put on pressure, they can turn the ball over. I think we kind of see that. They're at home. They're winning games. And I don't think the Giants are that much better than the likes of the Carolina and the Jets and the Texans, and they beat Baltimore in there as well. So I think Miami kind of keeps it rolling and beats some of these inferior opponents they've been facing.
Ben, you know what it is? I think the perception on them is still so low because of how slow they came out of the gates. Yeah. But they were dealing with so many injuries, and now that they're healthy, I like the Dolphins before the season started because I'm like, look, that defense is going to roll. But they had so many injuries in the beginning, and then they just lost all these games. And that narrative for them hasn't flipped yet. And I think this is a perfect example because if that team started off healthy, there is no chance in hell that they're only -4.5 favorites against that Giants team this week. So I feel like you're still getting some good value on the Dolphins there because people are still low on them, but they've been rolling over the past few weeks. If you watch that team, they're a good team from top to bottom, truly, with the offense, and how good they've been playing defensively. Like, I just feel like you're getting a good value because people just aren't high on this team at all.
Yeah, I think they found a blueprint. I mean, first of all, they're not giving up a lot of points. They've given up 17 or less points in these 4 games. They beat your juggernaut Patriots to start the year, so you know that's legit.
Fake win.
Yeah, certainly a fake win. We can thank Harris for that, but I just think that this team, Steve, you're spot on. They are kind of a tier above some of these teams, and we're starting to see that, but I don't think the spreads have fully reacted just yet.
Right. Totally.
All right. That's all fair. Steve and I obviously like the Patriots on Monday night. I think the White injury is going to play a pretty big factor. It will be a real road test to see what Mac Jones can do in a real road atmosphere, in a stadium where adult toys get potentially thrown at you on the field. It's going to be a lot different than going to Atlanta and playing in front of a 25% capacity in a primetime game. So it will be tough, but I like where the Patriots are at. Duggar COVID-related potential news isn't great. He's been awesome on that defense. I'm hoping that he is out there. But yeah, I'm on the Pats -3. I do think they win the game. They've been the more consistent team, and they're really rallying around this run, whereas the Bills bounce back as they should in New Orleans on Thanksgiving, but they've been super inconsistent. We've already talked about the game plenty, but Ben, you're here. I know you're leaning towards or betting the Bills in this one. Make the case for us before we kick Steve out and go to college football.
Yeah, tough game. I have not bet it yet. I think I'm probably going to lean to the Bills side, and I think it's more situational. Patriots look great. There's no doubt. They have played teams where almost every team is missing a focal point of the offense, and I think they've gotten that, and they've taken advantage, obviously. But what I want to see, and Mac Jones has answered every call, I don't think that the Patriots will be able to run down their throat. So it's going to fall to this passing game a little bit. And obviously in that atmosphere with Josh Allen on the other side, I think that the Patriots to win the game are going to have to be pretty dynamic on offense. If they can do that, they check another box and they probably assert themselves as the team to beat in some ways in the AFC. But I do think that the Bills are going to show up and do some things that Tennessee and Cleveland and Atlanta and those type of teams just were unable to do to the Patriots.
If this moves to 3.5, would you still be interested in the Bills, or would you side in with the Pats at that point?
I wouldn't take it at 3.5. No, I think that this is one. This is a tough game. And when you're talking about like hooks like that, that's a serious half point. So I respect New England enough to probably leave it off my card. I don't think I would bet New England there, but it would be a pass for me.
Fair. Yep.
All right. There's some NFL. Steve's getting out of here. We will be right back. It is conference championship weekend in college football. We will talk about some of the biggest games of the year. All right. We cut some dead weight. Steve Buchanan's out of here. Welcome back into the Unreasonable Odds podcast. Follow us on Twitter at UnreasonableOdd. Follow me on Twitter at Julian Edlow. Our guest, Ben Rasa of Osmo.com, sticks with us. Follow him on Twitter at Jazzaraz, right?
Jazzaraz DFS. Yes, sir.
Jazzaraz DFS. There it is. All right. It is conference championship weekend in college football. Awesome time of year. Much smaller board to focus on. Huge games to focus on. 2 of them on Friday night. First one kicking off is Western Kentucky and UTSA. This one has been on the move a lot. I took Western Kentucky here in a pick. They're now -3. I don't hate it. Total 72.5. I think Western Kentucky, who lost this game the first time around, has enough in the tank to get it done in the conference championship game, kind of adapt to that loss. They have some more under their belt with the first-year offensive coordinator, the first-year quarterback, all transferring over from Houston Baptist. I don't mind it at 3. That's about as far as I would go. I'm happy to have it at a pick. First game featured 98 points. I would play the over 72.5 if you wanted to play on the total. What do you got in this one, Ben?
Yeah, I'm in line with you. I think that Western Kentucky, they want to throw the ball. I think they do avenge that first one where they lost by 6 points. UTSA lost last week. Their quarterback got banged up. I do think he's going to come back and play here, but it's just pretty simple. I think that Western Kentucky's passing attack is going to expose this team a little more. I thought they should have won the first game. The line says it all. You got it at Pick'em. I got it at 2. Now it's up to 3. I think the time is now because I have a feeling it closes north of 3 and we're both on the Hilltoppers.
I didn't think it would move this far. I'm in for 1 unit. I wish I had gone bigger, and then you just take that 3.5 and try and hope for a little bit of a middle on some of your play. I still want some exposure to Western Kentucky. But the bigger game on Friday night, obviously, the Pac-12 championship. We saw it 2 weeks ago. It was a beatdown in Utah. The Utes eliminating the Ducks essentially from the college football playoff situation. Now they play again. I've been saying this all year. I had Utah at plus 450 to win the division. Cash that. I wish I had them. There were like 10-1, 12-1 in this game at one point when they lost so much earlier in the season. I've been saying this. If they went with Cam Rising out of the gates instead of Charlie Brewer, this team would probably be in college playoff football. You know what I'm saying? In contention to make the playoffs. I don't know why I stumbled over my words there. In contention to make the playoffs. They would probably be maybe a one-loss team, and that's good enough this year. I have laid it again with Utah. Utah minus 2.5. I think we're going to see a lot of the same. You can make the argument that Oregon, now playing, with house money, they don't have the pressure of making the college football playoff, could get a bounce back win without as much on the line. But matchup wise, I think this all lines up for Utah. And that's why we saw the beatdown we did the first time. It's not a home game. It's in Vegas, but Utah minus 2.5 is a pretty strong play for me on Friday night.
Yeah, I think you like it a little more than me, but I still lean to Utah. First of all, I can't agree more. Charlie Brewer, the Baylor transfer, that was not the answer early. They dropped. They were 1-2. They've hit their stride. They've been fantastic. I think if Oregon falls behind again, it's curtains. They're not built like that. I expect them to play a hell of a lot better, but at the same time, Utah's got great personnel. They can do a lot of different things. Strong defense. They're the best team in the Pac-12, and I do think ultimately they're going to show that.
I'm a Utah fan in the Pac-12. I'm just so sad that they didn't have Cam Rising from the start, and we're not talking about a playoff team here.
Did you see those helmets, though, that they wore against Oregon with the ship on them? That was slightly disturbing.
And like the gray jerseys, those are pretty nice.
Not bad.
You don't like them as much as me. Just like you don't like Utah as much as me. I'm all in on Utah.
You're all about it. Okay.
All right. We're on to Saturday, noon window. I'm going to let you have the floor first before we get to the actual games. Kent State, Northern Illinois. I got nothing here. I do know that Kent State has been on the move. They're now a 3.5 point favorite on DraftKings Sportsbook. You can maybe get some threes there. What do you got in this one?
So they're going to be points, 74.5 point total. This is similar to the Western Kentucky situation. Like the first time these teams played, nearly 100 points. Kent State cannot stop anybody. Northern Illinois cannot stop anybody. Kent State is a team. I have a ticket. I've got them to win the MAC ticket. So I'm really hoping that I can crush that, cash that 9-1. What'd you say?
What number you got?
9-1.
9-1.
Not bad for a team that played a really tough non-conference schedule. And obviously once they got in against competition like this, I think they've shown that they're the best offense in the MAC. And that honestly means the most. The other thing to keep an eye on, last thing I'll say, Northern Illinois' quarterback did not play last week. They were assured of this game. So maybe it was precautionary, but if he doesn't play again, I really like Kent State. I have a feeling he will. Either way, I'm going to take the Golden Flashes to get it done. Would prefer 3, of course, if I can find it.
There you go. All right. Also in that noon window, Baylor and Oklahoma State. Beginning of the year, I believe Oklahoma to make the Big 12 championship game was minus 335 on DK Sportsbook. And that was a good number. There were minus 4s out there. And here we are, of course, with Baylor and Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma State wins this game and other things fall in place for them, you can make the argument that they are in contention for the college football playoff. So this is a big one for them. I made a small 1-unit play, and I'll have my best bets article out for this slate on the DK Playbook Thursday night, Friday morning. Small 1-unit play, Baylor plus 5.5. I like them in this game. Conference championship weekend generally caters to favorites. College football in general, you like dogs. This weekend, you generally like favorites. This is one of the only dogs that I am betting. I'll play the 5.5 with Baylor. Smaller play, obviously not super confident in it. Let me know what you're thinking on this one.
So these teams played 24-14 the first time for Oklahoma State at home. To me, they're kind of carbon copies of each other. Very strong defenses, not great offenses.
I think the total opened like 48.5, 49. That would be a good under.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty low scoring. This is not related to what you're asking. I don't think that Oklahoma State should be in the playoff. Like if Cincinnati wins and they get jumped, I will be very upset. I think Oklahoma State would have to be behind Cincinnati still. I would hope, but having said that, I think this could be a competitive game. The one thing I want to point out with Oklahoma State, yes, they've got one loss. They've got a bunch, 5 or 6 wins this year by a touchdown or less. They've been very fortunate. Those are kind of coin toss games. You know, they beat Boise State by 1. They beat Missouri State by 7 to open, Tulsa by 5 early in the year. So just, they're a fine team. I don't know how good they really are. I don't know how good Baylor is. I think a very low scoring game. This is the game that I would like to beat. Last bet on the card. I don't have a feel here. This is a pass for me. The tough game to really break down.
Very fair.
Get them at it. It should be Oklahoma. They should have won last week.
I know. I had them in a parlay with Alabama to win their division and Oklahoma to make the Big 12 championship. I thought that was a lock that I made preseason. All right, we'll see if we can. There's a couple smaller games in the afternoon. If we have time, we'll loop back to them. SEC championship game. Georgia's a 6.5-point favorite over my Alabama Crimson Tide. You know, I'm a Bama guy. I just close my eyes and bet Bama every week historically, and I do just fine, including the first half. This year is the year that I get my butt kicked for all those years of profit. They're just not the same. They're not the same. The offense isn't the same. The defense isn't the same. And Georgia's defense is a well-oiled machine. The way that the Heisman is looking this year, like if you could just give the Heisman to the Georgia defense, I feel like that would be the most appropriate way to do it with no clear-cut favorite at all. I want to root for Alabama in this game, but they might not score. Alabama, I think that Georgia, this is Georgia's time. You can just feel it. Like they're going to win this game. And they probably will take pride in playing till the final whistle, letting Alabama score as few points as possible for all the previous years. I think this one, either Alabama is going to shock the world and stay right in it, or Georgia's going to blow them out.
We're going to find, I mean, Georgia has not, when I say they haven't been tested, that is an understanding. I mean, they have rolled through everybody. And the thing that I take away from it the most, you can say, you know what? Okay, well, Georgia plays on the other side. And besides Kentucky, I don't think there's a ton of great teams. Well, they did have a couple common opponents, Auburn and Arkansas. Alabama, yeah, they got through Arkansas. They almost lost to Auburn. Georgia, when I say dismantled, 37-0 against Arkansas, 34-10 against Auburn on the road.
Yep.
Georgia's just a different gear. They have like 4 or 5 running backs. Stetson Bennett's way better than I thought he was. And they have the best defense in the country by a long margin. So
Alabama doesn't have a running back. Like they've gotten by with all their Najee Harris's, Derrick Henry's, like big physical running backs. Brian Robinson's pretty solid. He's hurt. He's probably not even going to play. Like
they need Bryce Young to run. I don't know why he's so hesitant to not move. He clearly can. I don't see in a game like this that they can rely just on these guys on the outside. I think that Georgia is going to get on top and really put the heat on them. I laid the points. I laid the 6.
Yeah. I mean, pains me, but that's probably what I'm going to do.
I think that Bama, not to talk playoff too much, but like, what do you think happens in that if Bama just loses a generic game? Are they out?
Probably. I want them to be in, and everybody else is so bad that you like maybe can make the case they should be in, but I think they might be a top 4 team, but they just kind of aren't good enough. There's other more deserving teams, I guess, on resume. It's a tough call.
And you can't put them at the problem. I think like they can't put them at 4 because then they just have to play Georgia. They're never going to do that.
So then you have to put them at 3, and 3 is going to be overranking them.
Yeah.
And so what are you going to put a 2-win team at 3 and an undefeated team at 4 and serve up Cincinnati to get swallowed alive? Like that's pretty rude to Cincinnati. Like it's tough. Georgia's going to be 1. We'll see what happens after that. We'll see what happens after that. Speaking of Cincinnati and getting in, -450 on the money line to have the undefeated season. 10.5 points though. I haven't bet this game. I might bet Houston at 10.5 if I bet this game. This is probably the dog that interests me the most on the board. Houston's been really good, and Cincinnati's going to have a lot of pressure on it in this game. And down the stretch, they haven't really been winning games as big as you would want them to feel comfortable about them. So this is going to be Houston plus 10.5 or pass for me.
It's going to be Houston plus 10.5. It's going to be Houston money line, small units. I think that Houston has a real shot here. This is a team, they lost the opener. They were up at halftime and they did not score in the second half against Texas Tech. They have not lost since. 11 straight wins. They've looked fantastic. Clayton Tune knows what he's doing under center. They've got guys on the outside. They've got running backs, and they have serious guys on the front. And the one thing that Cincinnati really struggles with is pass protection. I know Ritter can diffuse that because he can move. I think this is going to be a very close game. I hope Cincinnati wins, and I do think they're the more talented team. 10.5 is too much, though. I think that Cincinnati has struggled with a lot of inferior opponents. I think there's a real argument that this could be close to the best team that they've played this year. And yes, I know they've played Notre Dame. Houston is a very good team by far.
Those frauds.
Yeah, get them out of here.
I like the new coach, but Notre Dame's just always a fraud in my mind.
I think Houston is really going to test them in a lot of ways that they haven't seen this year.
All right, I'm with you. I haven't bet it. I'll just make that a bet. I knew I was going to bet it. I don't know what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, 10.5 was good enough for me.
Yeah. All right, another 10.5 point spread in the Big Ten. We have Ohio State a touchdown favorite. We have Wisconsin a touchdown favorite. That's going to be the conference championship game. So of course we get Michigan and Iowa. Michigan wins this game and they're in. It's as simple as that. I think they win. 10.5 is a bit much for me. I think they're going to feel the pressure in this spot, but I don't know if I can bet on that Iowa offense. This is probably a pass for me, but I know it's really juicy. If you want to build a parlay, Michigan minus 450 is your piece to like get something down, more of a 4, 5, 6 point favorite. Like if you like Oklahoma State, if you like San Diego State, a team like that, you get them down to win the game by taking Michigan to win the game. That's the way I'm looking at this. Nothing on the spread for me.
I did just that with Georgia, actually. Like Georgia and Michigan to win the game. I don't see how Iowa can score. I don't want to lay 10.5 with a 43 point total. That's a pretty narrow window, but I just think Michigan ultimately, they're going to run the ball. Iowa can't do anything. They're using 2 quarterbacks. That just shows you how bad it is for them. Yes, they've won 4 straight. Northwestern by 5, Minnesota by 5, Illinois by 10, Nebraska by 7. That is not anything like Michigan. I think Michigan beats them, but I don't want to lay 10.5.
Iowa's not good. I had Wisconsin. I had a lot of bad beats in the last week of the regular season. I had Wisconsin to win the Big Ten West at plus 115 to start the season. I was just like, okay, I lost.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh my God, it's alive. And they're minus 7 favorites the last week of the regular season, and I lose it. Spectacular. Just like Oklahoma should have cashed me my bet when they were up 9 in the Big 12 title game, but rough season finale for me in the futures market. Okay. Game of the weekend, in my opinion, my biggest bet, the one I'm most excited for, the one Samir, our producer, who is wearing all his pit gear right now off camera, Wake Forest and Pittsburgh, ACC title game, Saturday night, 8:00. This will be on the main screen for me with Michigan on the side screen. This is the game. I bet pretty big Pittsburgh at minus 2.5. DraftKings Sportsbook right now has them at 3 minus 105. You can still get some decent juice to buy the half point, which I think is worth it. But I don't necessarily think will come into play. 2 good offenses, but Kenny Pickett's the better quarterback, and Pittsburgh has by far the better defense. Pittsburgh, easy, simple call for me.
I bet Pittsburgh a lot this year. Somehow I bet them against Western Michigan and Miami, 2 games they never should have lost. But I love what this team is all about. Pickett, Addison. The thing I want to highlight, though, they've got a trio of running backs, and this is where the weakness is. Wake Forest gives up 5.2 yards per rushing attempt, 113th in the country. I don't know how they're going to be able to stop that. Wake Forest only has 1 speed, just outscore everybody. It's not going to work against a team like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh can score with them. We've seen this time and time again. And I really respect what Wake has done all year. Pittsburgh, I think, shows why they're the best in the ACC. Similar to what we were saying at the beginning with Utah, Pittsburgh's the best team in the ACC, and I think they show it.
Yeah. All right, we are pretty in line for this weekend. Before we let you go, the 2 afternoon games that are decent that I did skip over: Utah State, San Diego State laying the 6, App State and Louisiana Lafayette. ULL 2.5 3-point dogs. Do you have any strong feelings in those games? I haven't bet either.
Neither have I. I don't know exactly. So Louisiana Lafayette, one of the many problems is their coach is Coach Florida now. I don't like messing around with situations like that. Yeah. Utah State, San Diego State. The only thing I'll say about this, shout out to San Diego State's punter, who is the best punter I have ever seen, ever. He is absolutely unbelievable. Other than that, though, there's some of the ugliest teams. I think that San Diego State with their defense. But as you mentioned, it's a 6-point spread. I wouldn't want to mess around with that. The teams that we've talked about, I think we've honed in on. To me, we see real angles. I've seen these teams a ton. I'm not looking to venture into conferences where I think there's a lot of parity week in and week out.
3 phases of the game. Got to win special teams.
You got to see this guy. It's like an 80-yard punt every punt. That's great.
All right. That is a college football segment. Ben Rasa of Awesemo.com. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you let us know what you got going on at Awesemo right now?
For sure. Yeah. So obviously with all the sports going on, very busy on the DFS side, but I will say, Julian, obviously I love this podcast. We've got some of ours as well. Me and Matt Kajeski breaking it down, doing the Awesemo odds, and we have Odd Shopper, the tool, which is totally free. So if you want to have some fun, stop on over Awesemo.com, explore, and hope you'll be part of the community.
Awesemo.com, one of my previous stops before getting on the full-time train at DraftKings. A lovely place, a lot of great content. So yeah, right after you wake up, do all your research, you're reading the DraftKings playbook, you're reading Awesemo.com, and you are cashing some tickets. Ben, I'm excited for Friday night. I'm very excited for Saturday. It seems like I want you to make money because we're in a lot of the same places.
That's right. Team effort.
Yes, we will inevitably probably be DMing about some awful beat that comes our way, but hopefully we win more than we lose.
I like it.
And coming up next, I'm talking like the podcast is over. Coming up next, we got James Alberino. He's going to give us a couple of NFL winners, and then we're going to talk the NBA and get on out of here. Alrighty, welcome back into the Unreasonable Odds podcast. I'm your host, Julian Edlow, and we are bringing in a repeat guest. You probably know him from some March Madness podcasts, from some NBA podcasts, and obviously from his work at Spread Investor and on Twitter at Spread Investor, James Alberino. James, how we doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks as always for having me on.
Our pleasure here at the Unreasonable Odds podcast. You're here to talk NBA. But we're really quick. I teased it earlier. We're going to go to the NFL really quickly. We were talking about the Bengals-Chargers game. I said that you had a bet in this one. I've bet 2 games so far. I'm on the Niners -3 and the Pats +3. If there is a third game that I bet this weekend, and I'm treading very lightly in the NFL, it is going to be the play that you're about to give out right now.
I do like the Cincinnati Bengals again, -3 versus the Chargers. I bet them on Sunday versus the Steelers. And I think they keep going and roll with the momentum. I think some people got confused by the Bengals after they lost to the Jets, and then they stumbled the next week after that. It was a clear hangover right after they blew out the Ravens, and then they lost their rhythm after the Jets game, and that carried over to the following week. Leaves a lot of doubts in people's minds, but against the Steelers, they got back on track, dominated the ground game. Joe Mixon ran all over the Steelers. The pass rush and the front seven for Cincinnati has been really aggressive, and they're doing a really good job. And it's a team that, you have those type of wins. You beat the Ravens. You beat the Steelers in the fashion that you did. It brings a level of confidence that when you're playing up against top-tier teams, even outside of your division, you go into that game with a lot of confidence. The Chargers have had problems with the run defense the entire season, and they've been overvalued for the past 5, maybe 6 weeks. And they lose to the Broncos, a team that they shouldn't be losing to at this point in the season. I think the Bengals at home in this game, this is a really good spot. And you can't even say that the Chargers have really the edge at quarterback. Joe Burrow right on par with everything that Herbert can do. I like the Bengals.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you there. And we talked about it earlier on the podcast. The Chargers cannot stop the run. They statistically allow the most yards per game, I believe it is, on the ground. And Joe Mixon's been shredding lately. We talked about that. His prop 86.5 yards, a lot. But I'm not betting the under on that for Mixon right now against this Chargers team. So I'm with you there. The Chargers are a little overvalued. I don't know how we got there, but 2 weeks ago, that division was like a pick'em. Chiefs versus the field. Scooped some Chiefs -110 there to win the division. And the Chargers were just due for some regression, and we're watching it happen. So yeah, I like the Bengals -3 a lot in this one. That's if I get on a third play this weekend, that's what it's going to be in the NFL. But let's talk NBA. That is your wheelhouse. That is my wheelhouse. That is where we go to and like to put a lot of our focus. Not the greatest Thursday card as we record this on Thursday, December 2nd. But I see you got Knicks Bulls highlighted here. Let's start there before we kind of go to the overall NBA conversation.
This is the third matchup with the Knicks and Bulls this season, which is a little crazy. We're only 5 weeks into the season, but That's how the NBA packed it this year. First two games were both in Chicago. Knicks won and covered the first game. Second game, Knicks were on a back-to-back. They lost. They had a lead at the end of the third, and then Chicago ran away with it. Chicago was the better team the majority of that game, and they should have won. Wasn't a good spot for the Knicks. I like the Knicks tonight. I bet them at +2. Couple reasons. It's a different reason why I took them in the first game and why I'm taking them tonight. But overall, the Knicks bench is better than the Bulls, and that's where I think the game is going to be decided. Kobe White is out for the Bulls. Has COVID, so that was as of a day ago. And beyond the eighth guy for the Bulls, they're not very deep with Kobe White and Patrick Williams out. They have Caruso, who's great off the bench, Ayo Dosunmu, good piece off the bench, and Derrick Jones Jr. Those are the first three guys off the bench. It's a good group, but it's not deep beyond those three. The Knicks, in my opinion, have the best bench in the NBA. You bring Derrick Rose off the bench, Emmanuel Quickley, Obi Toppin, and Nerlens Noel. Those four guys, whenever the Knicks starters trail in a game and the second unit comes in, it's almost automatic at this point that the bench unit is going to close the gap and more likely than not take the lead. That's what happened with the Nets game on Tuesday night. And I think the Knicks are going to be really, really honed in defensively. I'm all in for the move with Burke starting over Kemba. That's how I felt before Tuesday when I bet the Knicks against the Nets. He's 6 inches taller than Kemba Walker. It's a lot different. Getting up a shot against 6'6". You saw it.
Seen firsthand, man. Like the Celtics Heat series in the bubble was the most exposed I've ever seen Kemba defensively. Spoelstra just went back at him time after time after time, and Gordon Hayward still had the ankle injury, so the Boston wasn't deep enough to get anybody else in there for Kemba. They just abused him defensively. So, I mean, that move, given the Knicks' size, without sacrificing much, if any, scoring, is huge for them.
And it's tough. Look, Kemba's a New York City kid. I'm from New York City. I grew up my whole life. Kemba played in the same league in high school that I played. We're 1 year apart. I want him to succeed in the Knicks, but everything that I have felt about this move, because of my liking for Kemba, it makes me feel like it's the right move, business-wise, team-wise, whatever we want to label it. But yeah, the Knicks are going to be better defensively for it. They already were. Burks was 4 of 7 from 3, his first game starting in place of Kemba versus the Hawks the other night. Then he put up 25 points versus the Nets the other night. I think that the loss versus the Nets is going to light a fire under the Knicks because of the way that it ended. There were a lot of calls that were very questionable at the end of that game. And in a 2-point loss that was decided by free throws, you had a technical foul called on Julius Randle with 1.5 minutes left to go. You had James Harden swipe and hit Julius Randle on the back on a shot, not called. I think the Knicks are going to come in with a lot of fire tonight. And, it's something that on paper you can't label and call it definitively, but I think you're going to see it in the way that the Knicks play tonight. I like the Knicks +2 and for them to win this game.
I bet the Knicks in the game that they did win against the Bulls earlier in the season. This is probably it's the best game of the night in the NBA on Thursday. This is the game I would bet. I would side with you there. And looking in the player props, you got Alec Burks, the guy that you've been mentioning, over 16.5 points is even money. Bigger number, but like he gets shots up. So that's a prop that I'm eyeballing in that one. something that I texted you that I thought would be good to talk about. You had a play on, I believe it was Tuesday night, on the Memphis Grizzlies plus 3.5 in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
It was an interesting handicap because you have a lot of moving parts in that game. Ja Morant gets hurt over the weekend. He's out. He's the bigger name that everybody wants to focus on, which, maybe puts a little bit more value on the Memphis side. But on the Toronto side, you have some guys that are lesser names that are real scorers, specifically OG Anunoby out, who's been like the scorer for Toronto this year. Gary Trent, another shooter on that lineup, out. And it created some value on Memphis. But my question to you is, what is your thought process when capping a game like that? Because I think one of the more difficult things to do is I think that's an easy game to scroll past, is what I'm trying to say, because you say, oh, there's guys hurt on this side and we haven't seen much of a sample size of it. There's guys hurt on this side and we haven't seen much of a sample size on it. Neither team is really anything special. So how do we bet it?
Yeah. And I would say, first off, when it comes to injuries, like you said, I think your first inclination as a bettor and human tendency is to scroll past it, to be a little worried about it because there is unknown. And I think really the more I personally bet, what helps me is I think that injuries create opportunities because for as little as the public knows about injuries and how it's going to shape out, hey, there's sportsbook directors and there's guys that are setting lines that they're focused on the Saints Cowboys tonight. They're focused on big NFL games. I don't think a lot of guys watch the NBA day in and day out to make an assessment, a very good assessment, I should say, on when a star player like Ja Morant is out of the lineup and how's that going to affect the team in the first couple of games. Long story short, I watch NBA 6, sometimes 7 nights a week. Like it's different when you actually are watching the games and how the rotations are playing without certain guys. There's a difference between that and reading articles from someone who may or may not be watching it every single night and is putting up something for content. And that's no disrespect to some of the content that's out there, but I don't know certain things about the NFL or college football because I'm not watching it as closely as I am the NBA. Right. So I think it's case by case, but that specifically, the Raptors, I've been fading them most of the season, and their offense hasn't had an identity, a good one at least yet, the whole season, ever since Kyle Lowry left. Siakam came in the middle portion of the start of the season, and then OG Anunoby is the number one scorer. Gary Trent was questionable, so I felt like that there was a chance with him being out. So let me get ahead of the news and bet that early. And the thing with the Grizzlies, keep an eye on this. Jaren Jackson really steps up without Ja Morant. In 7 games without Ja Morant prior to the one where we bet them on Tuesday, he's averaged 24 points per game without Ja Morant. This season with Ja Morant and the whole season, he's averaging 16 points per game. So it's a big jump. Yeah. And with guys like Dylan Brooks, Brandon Clark, this is a deep team. I bet on the deeper team and a team that's young and scrappy. And a final nugget on the Raptors going forward. They're 1-9 against the spread at home so far. Julian, let's talk about this real quick. I know we're a little short on time. No one's really talking about this. The Raptors spent all of last season in Tampa away from their families.
Yes.
Now they come back short off season. It's their first time home for extended period of time. I think that's really affecting them because your day-to-day and everything, you haven't seen your kids, you haven't seen your girlfriend's wives. I think that plays a role into it, and no one's that I know of, at least, has spoken about it yet.
Yeah, I like that angle. And the second game that I was going to mention actually on this card, the Raptors are at home on Thursday. They're a 4-point dog. Only problem is it's a short number on the Bucks. You look at it and it's a short number on the Bucks. Problem is we know that game on Wednesday night had to put a lot of energy into that comeback against Charlotte. So probably a stay away spot, right? A letdown spot for the Bucks, but it's tempting on the short number.
You took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say. I really wanted to bet the Bucks. I was hoping last night wasn't a strenuous game, but yeah, you exert that much energy in the comeback. I can't bet it, but I can see the Bucks coming out slow and having enough talent to pull it out. Let's see if Budenholzer sits anybody or how they manage minutes. But in terms of talent for talent, Bucks laying 4.
Not even close.
This isn't close to Bucks Raptors from 2019, not even close. The Raptors are not a playoff team in this Eastern Conference. That I'm very confident in.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, I don't bet NBA games really when a team is on a back-to-back early in the day, as we're talking now, 1:00 on the East Coast. You can't bet it because, like Giannis could sit this game. You never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, if this is anything close to Bucks full strength, I will be tested right up into tip-off to not bet it. We'll see who's in out. And then, like you said, if this is, Bucks down 7-8 points after the first quarter and Giannis and most of those guys are in, I'll probably get in on that game live at that point.
Honestly, what I do with certain games like this where the matchup, you have so many advantages, but the spot is risky and there's like a 65-70% chance of them maybe not being 100%, just bet it smaller. Like,
yep,
let me put some money on it. It's not going to decide my night or my week, but like put a little bit on it and
not only that, play it smaller, but like I said, getting in live, like give yourself a little peek. Maybe they start slow, but it's a game that you think they look like they can come back in. You give yourself that little sneak peek. All right. So that's Thursday in the NBA. Let's go a couple big picture things before we get out of here. The Lakers, they're a disaster. They're LeBron-less for a little while. Russell Westbrook had one of the worst quarters that I've ever seen from him against the Kings. Worst quarters, worst halves. He did spark a third quarter comeback, albeit against the Sacramento Kings. This team's right where they were last year, kind of in the bottom of the Western Conference playoff picture. Yet at the top of the board, I should have pulled up the futures tab here on DraftKings Sportsbook. They are plus 850 to win it all behind the Nets, Warriors, and Bucks.
So fourth shortest at DK?
850 at DraftKings, to win it all.
Fourth shortest, wow.
Fourth shortest. Talk to me about the Lakers in the futures market, because you got LeBron. Anytime you got LeBron, it's tough to bet against LeBron. Put it that way. He can drag nearly anything to the finish line. But talk to me about why the Lakers are overvalued in the futures market.
They're not the fourth best team in the NBA. That's for sure. Not even when they're fully healthy. Definitely this is priced because of the automatically, yes, LeBron can do it all. And look, LeBron can overcome things and challenges in the NBA that 99.9% of the league cannot. Kevin Durant and maybe Giannis are two of the only guys, and Kawhi when he's fully healthy. We could throw Curry in that conversation. Guys that can carry and elevate a team to another level like LeBron does. Aside from that, though, this team is just constructed poorly. They still haven't figured out their starting five, and DeAndre Jordan shouldn't be starting on this team. Russell Westbrook on the court with LeBron together is not the right fit. They need, and Russ, his ego might get in the way of this, but Russell Westbrook would be better coming off the bench so that him and LeBron, who are two ball dominant players, don't have to split. And if you notice, Russell Westbrook plays really good games sometimes when LeBron James is out, and that's not a coincidence.
That's why I took Westbrook's points, rebounds, assists when LeBron was ruled out of that game against Sacramento, which I've cashed a couple of times this year. His start was so putrid that he never got there. He missed it by like 3 or 4. If he put anything but goose eggs across the board in the first quarter, it would have gotten.
Yeah, and I just don't know if even when the Lakers do figure out their optimum lineup, if it's really a clean slate ahead of them. They're going to have challenges that even when they figure this thing out, There's a lot of competition in the West. The Suns are really good. Still not getting talked about it, which on a 17-game win streak, it's the most underrated 17-game win streak. The Utah Jazz last year on their 19-game win streak, it was like they couldn't get out of your face. It was all over the place. The Warriors, when they get Klay Thompson, they're better than the Lakers.
Yeah.
When the Clippers get fully healthy, they're deeper than the Lakers. The Nuggets, when they get Jamal Murray back, I love the Nuggets when they're fully healthy. The 10-11 record right now, that's a product of the last week and a half being really tough for them. Yep. With Jamal Murray back and Will Barton healthy, this is a really good team out of the West. Out of the East, the Bucks are better. The Nets are better. The Heat, especially Bam Adebayo, he just got hurt, but they're better. I'm not even going to count the Hawks as being better than the Lakers, but when the Hawks figure their stuff out, they might be better than the Lakers. All in all, together, with these injuries, and we could say, all right, when LeBron comes back, when Davis comes back, these guys can't play a full 82 games. So they're going to be in the middle of the pack of the Western Conference by the end of the season. They're not going to get home court advantage for the entire playoffs. The Lakers are not winning the title this year. I don't see them even winning the West. I think it's the Suns and the Warriors are going to be in the Western Conference Finals. And I think we're just going to see these odds get higher and higher and higher. So the Lakers are a fade for me, man.
I was going to say, after that game the other night, and we'll touch on the rematch on Friday really quickly before we get out of here. Conference winner-wise, like, I do have a tough time seeing it not be the Warriors or the Suns, which you can split right now at, like, you can go Warriors plus 290, Suns plus 400. I would feel pretty comfortable with one of those getting out of there. What else before we talk about those two teams going at it again in the futures market jumps out to you for value? Because when a team like the Lakers is eating so much of the value up, it has to create more elsewhere.
Nuggets to win the West, but that doesn't mean bet it right now, because I would bet it. I would bet it a little bit closer when there's more clear news on Jamal Murray coming back. It's still indefinitely that he's out, but it's early in the season. We still have close to 60 games left. So if he comes back and it's sometime around February, March, this team is dangerous. This is a roster that gave the Lakers everything that they could handle in the bubble in that Western Conference Finals. It was 4-2. The Nuggets embarrassed the Clippers that year. And the Nuggets, when they get Murray back, are going to be a lot closer to that bubble team than they were to the 2020 team that had injuries and started Campazzo and Austin Rivers, who was a free agent 2 months prior to signing with the Nuggets. So I love the Nuggets in the futures market, and also on the Eastern Conference. I think the Heat are the best team in the Eastern Conference when Bam Adebayo's healthy.
Yeah, and he's out for a little while now.
In terms of value, we could talk about them being close to the Bucks, yes, and to the Nets, yes. But the Nets and Bucks are priced so much more expensive than the Heat. So all the value in the Eastern Conference is with the Miami Heat.
I totally agree with you there on Miami. All right, last topic before we get out of here. We got an awesome game between the Suns and Warriors in Phoenix on Tuesday night. I thought I was pretty sharp when I got in there on my plus 125 on the Warriors when the Booker injury news got announced. Phoenix dug in defensively in that game. Golden State scored half of its points, 48 points in the first 17 minutes, 48 points the rest of the way in the last 31 minutes. It was a great game. We got a rematch Friday night in San Francisco. Different game, though. Now you got the Warriors at home. It sounds like we have no Devin Booker for this game, which will be factored into that line. And then you got Phoenix playing the second night of a back-to-back. They're at home, 12-point massive favorites tonight against the Detroit Pistons on Thursday. Anytime you have these rematches in the NBA, I have the team that lost the first one kind of circled, and now they're at home, and now there's no Devin Booker. So I just hope it's not laying too many points, but this is probably going to be a Warriors play for me on Friday night. What do you think this number is going to be? Where are you at in this game?
Yeah, I'm with you on all the angles, the rematch angle. You know, we both love that. And I want to say, so if this opened in Phoenix at Phoenix minus 2.5, now you throw Booker out.
Yeah.
maybe Warriors minus 3.5 at home.
Right.
Half.
So it should, like, in theory, it would be there at what, like Warriors minus 1.5, 2 with Booker. You just kind of.
I would say, I think the books had the Warriors probably rated slightly better than the Suns prior to the first game. So I think you might have seen -3 or at -2.5, I think at the lowest, if Booker was healthy for this game. So I think we might see 3.5, a little bit overreaction to the Devin Booker news. Personally, I'm not comfortable laying 3.5 if that's the case. I think it's too much of an adjustment. I think the Suns are too deep to really be comfortable with that. That said, I wouldn't bet the Suns in the game. My lean would be to the Warriors, but I just don't love the number.
What number will it take for you to bet?
2.
Go 2 on Golden State on Friday night?
I would need 2. I think the Suns are just that good. The Suns, Ayton still is the best big man on the court, and
by far,
you could split up minutes. They have guys to go to between Bridges, CP3, Crowder, Cam Johnson off the bench, Cam Payne off the bench. They're a lot more than just Devin Booker.
That is for sure. All right, James Alberino of Spread Investor. You got anything going on? Anything you want to tell us about other than to follow at Spread Investor on Twitter?
You could just follow on Twitter, and like I said at the beginning of the show, I follow the NBA really closely, and I try to just bring that aspect to Twitter and the industry. I know a lot of people cover football throughout the week, and I try to bring in side money, let's call it, with the NBA, where a lot of people that's not their focus. But if I could bring in some basketball knowledge and some stuff that you weren't planning on betting and give you a couple reasons to bet that's really just what I try to do on Twitter.
There you go. Plenty of free plays on Twitter with write-ups. Not everybody writes it up. They just tweet out the play. You get a lot of write-ups at Spread Investor on Twitter. All right, James, thank you for joining us, man.
Thanks as always, man. We'll talk soon.
Yes, that is another episode of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. You got your NFL, you got your college football conference championship talk, you got your NBA talk. Good luck to all of you guys in week 13 conference championship games, NBA. We will be back with a Tuesday podcast. I believe that makes it December 7th next week, as well as a Thursday podcast with a guest. December's here. It's the holidays. We will be giving away to you. There will be free bets. Steve Buchanan and I will maybe even be refunding some of your bets that you lose because we're in a good mood and it's the holidays. So follow on Twitter at Unreasonable Odd, the podcast, and we will have plenty to do here in the month of December.